Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds. Today we're talking about grackle. And many people, if you've been feeding birds for a long time, especially here in the heart of the country and really pretty much anywhere in the northern two-thirds of the U.S., you dread the grackle season, as I call it, for a lot of reasons. So we're going to talk about that today. Some of the ways to help you maneuver through the grackle season. What are grackle? Who are the grackle? The first thing that we really do have to address is what is a grackle. Many confusion, much confusion by many people out there over the years, calling any blackbird that is obnoxious at their feeder a grackle, or any bird that is obnoxious at your feeder a starling. And a lot of people come in and say, I've got grackle all over my feeders this winter. And no, you probably don't have. If you live in the Kansas City region, you certainly don't. Nor now, you guys down south in the southern U.S. do have a lot of grackle in the winter. We do not, and up in this region. So we have the starlings. Now, here the picture of the European starling on the left, and this is in full breeding plumage, is what they're starting to look like now, with the yellow bill and the iridescence, purple and green. Really, not that ugly bird. It's just there are a lot of them, and they harass other birds at the feeders, etc. And they're very disliked by a lot of people. Now, two things I want you to separate between that bird and the true common grackle on the right. One is, look how short and stubby the starling is. They're short bird. They have very short tails, and they're chunky. Whereas the common grackle are elongated. They're long birds with long tails and a long, thicker bill than the starling. Another really good defining field mark for grackle are those yellow eyes, the yellow irises. Sometime in part of the season and in some parts of the country that the eye might not be that yellow. It'll be maybe a more brownish color. But notice the starlings have the really dark eyes, and most grackle have yellow eyes. So that's another good field mark to separate the two things. So, and for us, our grackle tend to start arriving now. I mean, literally now, the second week of March or so, and they come in, and usually when they're migrating, they're in big flocks, and so you'll have a bunch of them show up in your backyard, and they chase other birds off. They eat all your food. They throw food on the ground, and they get to be a major problem. So here is starling versus grackle. So know that today we're talking about the grackle, the common grackle. But I want to show you, this is this range map. That's what I want to do. Show you the range map, and it shows you their range. The breeding range is in the red. The wintering or year-round range is in that purplish blue, and then a little sliver down there where they only spend the winter down in South Texas. You see how long they are. They have long wings, and they are quite noisy. I'm using Sibley's Guide to Birds, and his songs are from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to play the common grackle song. So they're not very musical. They're almost mechanical sounding. And when there's a lot of them, that gets a lot louder than that. So the common grackle, and it has two larger cousins in North America. So you people who live down along the East Coast, all up through Florida, all along the Gulf Coast states, and down a little bit into the Texas, you have the boat-tailed grackle, which are a lot larger than the common grackle, and they are very noisy. I tell you, we hear them when I grew up with these guys, and they make some sounds that even resemble spaceships. So if you're down, like I say, along the coastal areas in the salt marshes, and especially in places like that, boat-tailed grackle, and there's, like I said, They have common grackle there too, but the bowtails are so much larger you really can't confuse them. And then a lot here in the Southwest is the great-tailed grackle. Now, the great-tailed grackle and the boat-tailed grackle used to, or even by some, considered the same species, just two subspecies. But genetic work tells us that they're not. So they're both very large, very long, and they too are more wetland birds along riparian river areas, and where there are wetlands here in Missouri. The place that we can dependably find them every year is up at Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge, which is a wetland complex. They nest up there, and there's some other wetland sites, but they are not. We don't find them except in winter when they're out feeding in pastures with mixed flocks. I'll see a mixed flock of blackbirds out in the field, and I'll see one or two really big ones walking around out there because they do have long legs and they walk around, and they are quite noisy. Sound a lot like the boat-tailed grackle. Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you would, consider visiting shopbackyardbirdcenter.com. Your support of that platform really helps me to continue adding these videos that you hopefully are enjoying and learning from. Thanks so much. But I know years ago I was down in Texas, San Antonio, for a business meeting, and I had dinner down on the Riverwalk. And those birds were everywhere, and they come in to roost at night in the trees along there, and the city spends a lot of money running off those birds so that they don't make a mess out of the Riverwalk down there, which is a beautiful area down in San Antonio. So you have the common grackle, great-tailed grackle, and the boat-tailed grackle. So they come in for us now, and they descend upon our feeders. How do you battle them? The first step I always recommend, the first thing is, if you have an open feeder that they can get into, safflower is your best friend. They do not like safflower. Now, the warning is if you have safflower in a mix, like Boardwalk blend or any other blend that has safflower in it, they're going to toss and toss, and they're going to pick out the sunflowers and the peanut things that are there, and they'll throw all that safflower out on the ground. So if you really do have to go cold turkey, just a feeder with just straight safflower in it, anything that's open like this. And so if you had, say, Boardwalk in there, and they came in and found sunflower in there, and then you switch to safflower, straight safflower, they're going to come in and they are going to toss and toss and toss. And that's why I wouldn't put too much in it, because they're going to look for that one sunflower seed that might be remaining in there. And so they'll toss and toss and toss. And they may do this a couple of times until they realize this is no longer a good source for the seed that I want. One of the other tactics, of course, for battling them are feeders that are too small for them. So finch feeders, perch feeders without trays. I normally recommend trays on multi-seed feeders so that the cardinals and bluebirds will like those trays, but grackle love them. So during the grackle season, some people take their trays off. But on finch feeders, I don't recommend trays anyways, because it does attract bigger birds. And of course, Nyjer is a seed they don't like very much either. So Nyjer is a very effective combatant. Safflower is a very effective combatant against grackle. And of course, caged feeders. This is the time of year that we sell a lot of cage feeders, because people get so upset with the grackle taking over that they keep squirrels out. That was their original intent, and the cages used to be closer to the feeder. Now they've made those cages bigger so that the grackle and the starlings can't crane their neck in there and get to the seed. So the anti-grackle regiment is any open tray that you have, you want to use safflower or Nutrisaf in it, because the grackle don't like it. Peanuts, black old sunflower, good quality mixes in a tube feeder with a cage around it, or finch mixes or finch feeders with small perches will help discourage them. And absolutely do not feed cracked corn. That is the number one attractant for grackle. They're have a major impact on our corn crops here in this country. They can be very destructive. They seek them out. So don't feed the cracked corn. It's just going to bring them in. So The other thing with common grackle is patience. Patience in that, again, like other birds, they are going to feed their babies insects. So once they start nesting, they tend to leave your feeders alone to a scale. Now they're not going to be nearly as bad as they are in migration when they first come in and right before they leave, and they're say be 200 in your yard. But during the nesting season, they're just occupied mainly with insects and feeding their babies. Now, one thing that people do not like about them is that when they poop, the babies poop, the grackle grab the fecal sac and they fly off with it. And one of the things they love to do, or it's instinctively for them, is drop them in water. So bird baths, and more importantly, swimming pools. People who have swimming pools during the nesting season for especially common grackle, it is a major call. We'll get them all the time. People are upset with them. But remember, it doesn't last but a couple of weeks, because birds, they hatch after about 2 weeks of incubation, and they're in the nest for about 2 to 3 weeks after that, and then it's over. So we say the grackle season around here is about now through maybe early July, and then they really, and they do taper off even before that. But this spring season, when they're first coming in, can be a real problem, but you can deal with them. Remember, safflower, cage feeders, no trays on feeders, so small perches. Do not feed cracked corn. So that's how you survive the grackle season. It's a great idea for a program. I'm glad that got sent in because it's very timely. The grackle are just starting to be spotted up here in the Kansas City region. So you guys down south, I know you have to deal with them all winter, but for a lot of the country, it is really just now, between now and June, July. All right. Hope you learned something. Please send an idea for more programs. If you would, give us a like, give us a share. If you hadn't hit that subscribe button, please do. Until next time, let's talk birds.